Hello guys, my name is Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto. In this episode, I'm going to show you a bunch of different stuff. We're going to go over the global M2 money supply and where it's currently projecting. We're going to have a blast off move for Bitcoin with a ton of global liquidity. And I'm going to take a look at two different time offsets because it became apparent to me that there may be two ways of looking at this. And I don't want to be so myopic that I'm not considering both different outcomes. This is still my primary observation, but someone here, a user named Beastly BTC, made a very compelling chart, and I want to share that with you as well, which has a different time offset. Then what I'm going to do, because how can you judge for yourself what's the best offset to use if you don't have the source code of the script that I'm using? I'm going to share that script with everyone in this video. And also I will put it in the description if it's on YouTube, and I will put it in a sub comment or a reply to my main post on X so that you can get the code and you can put it into the TradingView application for yourself. And I'll even show you what the code looks like and how to add it to TradingView. We're also going to take a look at the Bitcoin price and just like step back and take a look at what it's been doing recently. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk about and share with you this correlation that I alluded to in a prior video regarding Tether, USDT dominance, specifically the dominance of Tether, and as it relates to Bitcoin price tops. And what I'm going to show you has not been, to my knowledge, ever covered in the exact way I'm going to share this. I've taken it one step further than I've ever seen anyone else cover this. And to me, it's fairly compelling, although highly experimental. I just want to make that caveat up front. It's very experimental, but it looks compelling. And you'll see what I'm saying when I get there. Okay, so currently my best guess is that we have a 72-day offset between the global M2 money supply and the Bitcoin price. What does that mean? That means that if you take the global M2 money supply, the money supply of all countries on Earth collectively, and you plot that as this yellow line, and then you slide that yellow line forward by 72 days, it seems to align pretty dang well with the Bitcoin price. And because you've slid it forward by 72 days, you then have an additional 72 days of data that you can use in a predictive fashion. And why can you use it in a predictive fashion? Well, because if you look at the chart when they're overlaid on top of each other with that 72-day overlay, they align quite closely. So if that correlation continues to exist, and that's the assumption that we would be making on this, obviously if that correlation ceased to exist, this would not make sense. But if we assume that it does, because it has for the past several years correlated with this time offset, then we can know that the additional 72 days of data on the right part of that chart, basically from here to here, the stuff that Bitcoin has not yet reproduced, could very well be indicative of the directional moves that Bitcoin is going to make in the future. As I've said, I know it sounds crazy. It's like having a vision into the future, but that's essentially what we're saying here. And the theory I have is that it just takes a long time for the liquidity of various countries around the world, which will invariably overprint their money supply and deficit spend, which means printing money that into existence that didn't exist before. They're going to do that. And when they do that, they're creating money out of thin air, aka inflation, and that money takes a while to trickle down to the point where it gets into the commoner's hand and then he invests it in Bitcoin. And there's about a 72-day lag, which means that if we can know the current present day global M2 money supply, then we have an idea of what Bitcoin's going to be doing in 72 days. It's pretty wild, I know, but that is what this chart is showing us. So with that being said, with a 72-day offset, it looks like approximately April 1st. I mean, I guess you could start it from here, the 25th of March if you want, because it does begin the uptrend around here. It's just not significant until about April 1st. And maybe I should stay away from April 1st because everyone will think I'm making a joke because it's April Fool's Day. So starting approximately the 26th of March, is when it looks like this uptrend is going to take place for Bitcoin. Now, this is again with a 72-day offset. Now, I want to share this other chart because I find it fascinating. And this is a chart from Beastly BTC. He's only got 100 followers. Give this man a follow. He deserves it. He's a very clearly intelligent man. He put this chart together, very articulate, very clear. He knows what he's doing here, I can tell. And it's the same chart as mine that I just showed you with a yellow M2 money supply line. Same color here. And his Bitcoin line is orange. And he's added a third line, which is the MicroStrategy stock price in blue. And I'm not going to spend the whole video going over every aspect of this because you can pause it and read for yourself, or you can read it on my post on X. By the way, follow me on X because I make much more frequent posts there. If you're not following me on X, you're missing content, period. But anyways, back to the chart. So the yellow line is the M2 line, and you can see where he's drawn the correlations in. Now, when you go back further on the chart, the correlations get weaker, and that's the same with my 72-day offset. So this is just a different way of looking at it. And it's interesting because the difference between a 72-day offset and what he's got here, which is 45 days, and I have a lot of people, by the way, suggesting me things. So I get caught up in all the different suggestions sometimes. But the interesting thing is that the difference between 45 days, which is this chart here, 45-day offset of the M2, the chart that I drew earlier, which is 72 days, and the 105, which someone else said, is about 30 days apart. And that's really interesting to me because that almost suggests a monthly echo of sorts, where the charts do kind of make sense every 30-day spacing. Because, I mean, again, we're dealing with global liquidity here, and the way it trickles through the countries and finds its way to Bitcoin seems to sort of have a common denominator of about a monthly cycle at its core, starting with 45 days and then going to 72 and then 102. Seems to have this echo phenomena. Anyways, that's just a passing observation. I just found it interesting that the three most likely alignments happen to be 30-day derivatives of each other. Okay, so this chart, again, is showing us the 45-day offset. So it's not as much of a shift forward as my chart. See how my chart shows quite a big gap before the run-up, the big run-up. There might be this little run-up in the middle, kind of like a fake out. But we don't know. Is this the chart that's going to play out? I'm humbled, as you know recently, with my recent video admitting that I don't know the right answer and that I was willing to look at another person's suggestion. And I was starting with this 45-day. And I think that this is almost as equally valid. So I'm going to continue to shift back and forth and look at both of them to make sure I see which one fits the best. So back to my point I was just making is there's not much time on the 45-day shift chart until that going vertical period. It really looks like we have, I mean, it was as per my original videos, I was doing the 45 or 46-day shift. And that was March 6th was the blast off date. I mean, if that's the case, we're 4 or 5 or 6 days away from going vertical. And if that's the case, that will prove that we are on a 45-day shift. So it'll be good to pay attention to that. But on the converse, if it does take us a month to blast off until around April 1st, where we go vertical, or March 25th, when it begins to uptick for the first moment here, then if it takes that long, then we know that this offset, the 72-day offset, is the right chart. So I'm going to be watching. But the broad takeaway, assuming you're a holder and you're not just like a day trader, is that regardless of whether it's a 72-day shift, as shown on this chart, or it's a 45-day shift, which is shown on this chart, the next move is a massive injection of global liquidity into Bitcoin, a massive move up. It's just a matter of whether we're waiting 25 or 30 days for it or we're waiting 5 days for it. We'll find out soon enough. Now, if Bitcoin does make a move up, again, it could be this little bump right here. So I won't be too quick to judge which chart it is. I'm going to let it really play out. If Bitcoin starts making new all-time highs, then we know which time frame we're looking at. Did it do it on this time frame or did it do it on this time frame? But if it makes a little bump up, I'm not going to jump to a quick conclusion. But the reason that this chart is also compelling is because when aligning the M2 money supply, MicroStrategy also aligns at points with it when it's shifted forward by 45 days. So sometimes Bitcoin was loosely correlated, but MicroStrategy was tightly correlated. And for example, like here's this bump up in this M2 money supply, and it's represented by a bump up in both the MicroStrategy, the blue line, and the Bitcoin orange line right here. But like right here where we have this M2 money supply peak, there is no real solid peak for Bitcoin. There's sort of this sub peak maybe, and that might be it. But MicroStrategy makes its all-time high right there. So that's interesting. So it does lend credence to this original 45-day or 46-day offset way of looking at things. So that's enough on that. I'll let you look at this chart on your own, draw your own conclusion. And how better to draw your own conclusion than having your own Pine script, which is what it's called. And I'm going to show you how to add that to your TradingView account. So I didn't really know about this until recently. And there's a thing called Pine Editor down here. I'm going to open that. Basically, I took a couple versions of this M2 Global Liquidity Index and I merged the best parts of both of them into one until it's really like, I'm very happy with it now. None of the individual ones I was finding out there were quite what I wanted. This one has like a customizable offset. You can literally just do this pop-up window, type in a number here, it shifts in real time, it's drawn, overlaid on the same chart as your Bitcoin price. It's great. But that functionality wasn't present with the other functions that I wanted and all the country data that I wanted. So I merged a couple of them together, and that's what you're seeing down here. So you open the Pine editor and you copy and paste this code. And here's the code. It's very short. It's really just this code right here. It's all of 52 lines, including spaces. And real briefly, what you're looking at here is it's making an indicator, which is what you see on the chart. This is the part where it allows you to code the offset, where you can actually type in the number of days in that little programmable box, which is super, super useful. And then all these sections from line 9 down to line 44 are the different country data that it's pulling from TradingView. You know, you have the Eurozone data, the North American data, including Canada and the United States. You have non-EU data, Pacific data, Asia data, Taiwan, Hong Kong, India, Japan, etc. All of them individual, but added together at the end. We have Latin American data, Middle East data, Africa data, and then this formula right here adds them all together and divides by a very large number because the amount of dollars in circulation is utterly unfathomable, and the number on the right side of the graph becomes ridiculously large unless you divide it by whatever this giant number is, 1 septillion or whatever this is. You can leave that part out and you'll see the chart has a ridiculously large number on the y-axis. It just blocks part of your screen and it's not very helpful. So I recommend keeping that in there. Because you don't really need to look at the number on that chart anyways. You're looking for a visual correlation. And then basically it plots the chart and that's what you're seeing. So again, I will post this in the description of the YouTube video and also as a reply to my X post. Okay, so let's get out of here. And now you have been empowered. I had so many people asking me for that. Sorry it took me so long to share this with you. But I had so many people asking me for the script on that. And I decided, you know what better than to put it in the public domain and give you guys the power. That way you're not reliant on me to make a judgment call for you. I can, of course, share, and I will share what I think is the most accurate thing. But I've seen quite a few different opinions out there, some of which I agree with and many of which I don't. But this way you can be self-reliant. You can put in the figures I think are accurate and see what you think for yourself, and you can shift it around and play with it. And maybe we can all help each other get the most accurate view of this, because I think it's an amazing, amazing correlation, the global M2 money supply and the Bitcoin price. All right, so that's this part of the video. Now that I've shared the script with you and I've shared the 2 different correlations with you, the different offsets, we're going to jump into something new. This is the Tether dominance versus Bitcoin top correlation. Oh, and before we do that, right before we do that, here's Bitcoin. Let's step back and take a look at what's Bitcoin doing. This is the huge support zone down here, which is basically the top range of the previous channel. And Bitcoin did not touch it yet. And maybe it won't. Maybe we'll be lucky. This is a very large lower wick, which means a lot of buy pressure stepped in here. And in fact, you have 3 days in a row where that range was maintained. That's a pretty strong bottom, to be honest. We will see, though. We will see. You know, does the M2 Global Liquidity Index say we're going to shoot up in 3 or 4 or 5 days? Or does it mean we're going to go kind of chop sideways, have a fake out, and then shoot up like the 72-day offset said? We will have to see. Does it touch this support? At this point, I don't think it has to. I don't think it has to. Because we had this massive lower wick, I don't think that Bitcoin has to go down this low. It doesn't mean it can't, but it doesn't have to, because this is a nice bottom right here. This is a real nice bottom. So we'll see what happens. But I'm a long-term holder like many of you, I hope. And you know, whether it dips down to here or not in the next 30 days, as long as it's going to new all-time highs, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. All right, that's enough on that. Let's jump into the exciting new correlation. So first of all, as I wrote here, this is a highly experimental bull run top metric. Also, I'm going to view it in log scale in a minute, and that's the thing you've not seen before, most likely. I think I saw Benjamin Cohen share this chart in linear format, and that's where I got this idea from. So credit for what you see right now goes to Benjamin Cohen, unless he copied it from someone else. So he gets the full credit for what you're seeing right now. And what you're looking at right now, and this is Bitcoin price on the top in log format and Tether dominance in linear format, with a trend line drawn through the bottom of the Tether dominance. You can see there's a little deviation here, and we'll explain that in a bit. And what do we know about this? What's the correlation? It's that every time since the end of 2017 that the Tether dominance touched this trend line, it marked a Bitcoin top. It marked it in 2017 in December. It marked this sub peak in June of 2019. It marked the tops, all 3 of these arrows, for 2021. You can see Tether dominance is bouncing off that trend line, and that's where these tops are. It's really quite amazing, actually. Again, we have this kind of sub top or premature top in the Bitcoin price, $73,000. And again, Tether dominance touches this trend line. Almost every leg up, every steep leg up, it sort of touches this trend line, except, oops, what happened right here? It broke through. And so I had drawn this trend line before I saw any of this data, like back here. Like we were over here, and I was like, okay, if the USDT Tether dominance breaks down below this yellow line, that could mean we're heading toward a top. And sure enough, it did head down, but then it kept going a little further. It's back up again now. But I noticed something very interesting, because I was like, well, this can't be that reliable then. I'm about to throw this metric out if it's not dependable. I mean, you can't have it just deviate massively like this and think you're at a top right here, but then the Bitcoin price keeps going up another $50,000 or $20,000. In this case, it wasn't that much. It was, well, no, it was more like $20,000. It's, like I said, it's kind of unacceptable for a top metric. So I was about to toss it out because it seems unworkable until I decided to flip it to log mode, okay? So let me get rid of this because I don't want to murky up the thing. And here's log mode. Now, and this is the same white line, the same trend line, but you'll notice in log mode, it no longer correlates to the bottom. And it wouldn't, because the log chart is a curved chart because it's exponential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this line from myself so I don't have to look at it anymore. And I'm going to bring back this other series of trend lines I discovered, which is pretty uncanny. I'm just bringing them back to full color. That's how I don't delete them. All right, now, I didn't touch anything else. All I did was draw two different trend lines and flip it to log mode. Everything else has remained the same. All the tops are the same. All the bottoms are mostly the same. You can see this one's floating a little bit. But it was a sub-peak. So actually, in this case, it was more accurate. It looks more accurate over here too, because notice on the linear chart, the Tether dominance deviated below this linear trend line. But on the log chart, it does not deviate below. And this is the breakthrough discovery. It's that on a log chart, Tether dominance continues to predict Bitcoin tops every time Tether dominance bounces off this lower parabolic regression line. And that blew my mind because I had drawn this line before that happened. I had drawn it on the bottoms, and sure enough, it touches it perfectly, like to a T. This is this top. And this time it's no longer deviating below. That is freaking amazing to me, the accuracy here. And similarly, I left these trend lines here, and when they broke through them, that means we were heading toward a new top. It happened a couple times. And actually, if you want to zoom in here, you can see that the bear market ended the moment, see this was, let's say this is the bear market 2022, and right here, like this pop up, that's the end of the bear market. I think most would agree. Well, what's it doing directly below? Follow that dotted line straight down. It's breaking below this trend line, testing it, rejecting, and that moment where it broke down was the end of the bear market right here. And similarly here, where it broke down below this trend line, it was a massive move upward, just like here, a massive move upward. So it's interesting to note these trend lines on this chart as sort of a sub point of curiosity, but that's not the main point. Okay, so what do we have going on now? Well, if we zoom in, what we have now is a lot of room to run down. I mean, we have even more room to go up. And keep in mind, this is inverse. So if the Tether dominance goes up, that means Bitcoin is crashing. If the Tether dominance is going down, that means Bitcoin is climbing. And if Tether dominance touches this lower regression line, that means Bitcoin is topping. So this is going to become another one of those charts that I look at when I'm trying to determine whether Bitcoin has reached its euphoric blow-off top, or at least a sub-peak. I feel like we're far enough along in the Bitcoin cycle that it's fair enough to take profits on the next peak. I'm not saying that that will be the ultimate top. Let's say it goes to 135,000 or 130,000. I'm okay with taking some small profits there. Even if it does go to 150, you know, it hits here, I take some profits, Bitcoin would be going up here like this. And then Tether dominance bounces, Bitcoin's dropping, there's a correction, but then Tether dominance goes back again for another test, and boom, maybe here, July, you know, we have another retest of this Tether dominance lower regression line, and that would mark probably another top, either the final top or sub-top of Bitcoin, and I would be okay with taking some more profits there. I think it's better to take profits on a euphoric top than on a fear drop. You'll get more money. You'll get more bang for your buck on your sale. And altcoins are going to be pumping too as Tether dominance makes these moves and as Bitcoin pumps. So if you're an altcoin holder, have no fear. Alt season will be here. I know it seems horrible, but it will, I promise. Well, I don't promise, but I give it a very high odds. Let's put it that way. It's bad to promise anything in crypto because it can do anything. Okay, guys, so I don't want to make this video any longer. This is what I'm looking at. This is the Tether dominance correlation to the Bitcoin tops. And, you know, just really fascinating to me. Okay, guys, so I will be keeping my eye on this chart because if Tether dominance does come back down here and approach this, which I think it's going to do, like we said at the beginning of this video, within about a month or less, we're probably going to have a massive move up for Bitcoin. That means Tether dominance will take a dive, Bitcoin will move up, and Tether dominance will probably touch this line again. And that will probably mark a top or a subtop. Please share this video, please like, please comment, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Talk to you again soon.